Welcome to the All the Stuff podcast, where we jam about money, clutter, and food, and the real stuff under this stuff. Join me, Lisa Carpenter, your resident food coach, along with my co-hosts, money coach Jen Turrell and clutter coach Lisa Sharp, as we help you release what's weighing you down and heal your relationship with food, money, and clutter from the inside out. All right, we're here for today's episode, and I'm here with my co-host Lisa Sharp and Jen Turrell, and doing this in video format and also podcast format creates a whole different element of putting this together. So we've all got our hair and makeup done, and we're ready to kind of dig in. And this episode, I specifically wanted to talk about this belief that we can go back, or that we're starting over, or that we're at the beginning again. So specifically, as it applies to the women I work with around weight loss, eating healthy, there's this belief of, well, I've fallen off the wagon, so now I'm right back to where I started. In a lot of cases, they've, put on the weight again. Not necessarily in my program, but in other programs, this is just kind of a cycle we run. But the big belief that shows up that stops them from moving forward again is this, like, I'm at the beginning, and how am I going to make sure that this doesn't happen again? Or they believe that it's not possible for it to happen for them without constantly going back to the start. So I wanted to talk about this because I personally don't believe that we're ever starting from scratch again. No, right? Because we've come further. We know more now than we used to know. And one of the things I was talking to them about was, and I can't remember who said this, I think it was Seth Godin, that we cannot use the past to predict what's going to happen to us in the future. But so many of us try and do that. So I wanted to get your guys' take on this, because I know what I said to my clients was, you're further ahead than you think. I want you to recognize all the things that you've done, that you've implemented, that are still in your life. But how do you guys get caught in that trap, or get yourself out of being in that trap of, oh, now I'm back at square one again?
That's so juicy. And I'll go first here, just because I have personally worked with Lisa Carpenter and have been in her program, and definitely have this experience in terms of weight loss, in terms of food. And it's very much influenced how I now approach my own clients when we're dealing with their clutter and their homes and time management and all that kind of good, juicy stuff. Because it really is just about making constant decisions, making those micro decisions every day. And that through each of those decisions, it's really, taking the judgment out of those, letting those just be decisions and not have more meaning than that. And we're constantly evolving. There's, we're different than people from, who we were yesterday, who we were 5 days ago, who we were 5 years ago. And just getting present and acknowledging that, I think, is incredibly powerful. I think it's one of the most powerful tools that we have at our disposal, because it's all about perspective. We can really get tied into that mindset, that loop of, I'm never going to get this right. This is, I am this person that I was, I'll always be the clumsy, fat kid in gym. It's like I can't step into who I actually am now, because we have all of that baggage that we're dragging along with us. But it really doesn't really mean anything any more than what we attribute meaning to. And we have that capacity and that power to change our perception at any given time. And that's not to say that it's easy. Those synapses have been laid down for a long time in our little brains. So it's not, like you can read all the little pithy, cute little quotes and stuff you see all over Instagram and Pinterest and all that kind of stuff. And it's like, yeah, I'm going to go do all the things, right? But and it's inspiring for a minute. And then we go try to change because someone has said something that maybe was a little bit inspiring to us. And I personally also put out those pithy quotes. So I'm not judging that, but it's more work than that. it's more than just like, I'm going to change my mindset and then everything is going to be hunky-dory. It's deeper than that. And it takes more work than that, but it's absolutely possible. And I think it's more about that self-reflection, that self-knowledge, that we can start undoing those stories and start moving in the direction that we want to go in.
How many times have you had to begin again?
Every day.
How many times have you had to begin again? Begin again. How many times have you had to begin again? Maybe I'll ask this again. How many times have you had to begin again thinking that you were back where you started, but in fact, in truth, you weren't back where you started. You were just beginning again.
Mm-hmm. Well, I always think of it, especially around the end of the year and the start of the new year. I think a lot of us try to restart a lot of things at the start of the year. You look back through the year and you're like, oh, I meant to lose 10 pounds this year. And I did, I lost some of it for a while. I gained some back, or I meant to start training for a 5K, but I never actually signed up, or those kind of things. So I particularly think about this with the new year, especially because in 2011, I tried doing the David Allen Getting Things Done program. Have either of you ever tried that?
No.
So you've done it, Lisa?
No, so, I know his work well, but I've never done his program.
Yeah. So in 2011, I got the closest I've ever done to getting clean and clear, in box zero, all of that.
Yeah.
And I overall failed to keep it implemented, but a couple of the things that I liked, one was the 2-minute rule, which if you can do something in 2 minutes, just do it, because otherwise it takes longer to put it in your system and all of that. That was a great one. Another one is at the end of the year, you write your goals for the new year as if it's the end of that coming year, what you will have accomplished. And then at the end of the year, you read the one for the year before and then write the new one. I haven't done it every single year since then, but I've done quite a few. So on the one hand, there are a number of things that I've started over several times being like, oh, I didn't accomplish that and I meant to. On the other hand, if you do that, you also do see how far you've come year by year. I keep those letters on my computer so I can look at them. Mm-hmm. So yeah, I see two sides of it. And when you first brought up this topic, you messaged it out to Lisa and I both. And what I thought of was the starting over in terms of, okay, it's a new year. I'm starting fresh. I'm starting clean. I'm going to do it this time, but not really accounting for all the baggage that does come along with you.
Yes.
So I was kind of thinking of it in terms of like, yeah, every time I try to start fresh, these things come back in on me. Yeah. And for me, the food is one of the ones that I've really struggled with. I had a very strange relationship with food as a child. My mother was super healthy back in the 80s when it was not that cool to be like, she grew kombucha in our pantry. And that was like in 83. I was like, Mom, if you would have started a business, you would be making millions right now with you would be the queen of kombucha, right? But my reaction to it was to always want chocolate, and we never had chocolate in our house. We didn't do sugar. We did honey, all the ways that I know I should eat now is what my mom tried to push on me as a child. And I really went against it. I found real resistance. So I would sneak foods whenever I could. So it kind of taught me this thing. And also my sister was a long distance runner. It was very, very thin and ate very little. So and my best friend in high school was anorexic. So I feel like I had all of these sort of confusing food stories around me. And I do catch myself pampering myself with foods that I really like, but I know are not the best for me. Like, I don't do fantastic with dairy. I'm not allergic, but it's just that stomach kind of thing. Yeah, I love fancy cheese platters. So like that's a special treat, that kind of thing. My family's always been into like lots of different varieties of cheeses for some reason, especially my husband's English family. So, so I feel like I've tried to start over a number of times without acknowledging all the baggage that's coming along and planning for that. I think if we can plan for the things that have taken us off track in the past, that's something. If we can set up some systems, like for finances, again, part of the reason that I focus on finances is I've really struggled with this a lot. I feel like nobody taught me a lot of the things that I probably should have known at some point earlier in my life. And that's why I want to share those things now. Because I feel like for women especially, we're not always primed with the stuff in the way that sometimes men are. People assume men are going into be captains of industry and all this stuff. So, so for me, I try to set up systems to kind of help hedge against those things that I know have been problems for me in the past. With food, it's harder because it's you can grab it so many different places and put it in your mouth. So almost unconsciously.
What's interesting, you said, is you like to reflect on the baggage you're still bringing along. And the approach that I actually use is the exact opposite. Yeah. I don't want my clients to focus on the things that they're still doing wrong. When they feel like they're beginning again, I actually want them to sit down and take an inventory of all the things they've brought into their lives that are different now. So even in you talking about, you still do your lists every year, right? Mm-hmm. You do your goals, and you look at that, really acknowledging and appreciating that and recognizing like that has made an impact in your life and you're allowed to build on it. So being aware mm-hmm. of the stuff that you'd still like to change, but actually celebrating and acknowledging the things that you have implemented that have changed. So totally. Even when it comes to food, this belief that I'm right back at square one, anybody who's done my program, you're never back at square one because the information didn't fall out of your brain.
Right.
You didn't forget it. So right. Even if I know I'll get the right answer from Lisa, but even with Jen from the work we did ages ago, there's stuff mm-hmm. you still remember. There's stuff mm-hmm. you still think about that you've brought with you.
Mm-hmm. And there are things that I've changed because of that.
Exactly.
The information.
Yeah.
So
you always evolving. That.
Yeah. So I want people mm-hmm. to think about this, letting go of this belief that you're back at square one, because the truth is you're not. You have moved forward. So the thing that I wrestle with and why I love the group of us coming together, I don't wrestle with my weight and food, but oh my goodness, do I ever with my finances. So I could look at my debt and say, well, I'm still here, and right. I've added to it, and think, wow, I'm back at square one. I am no further ahead. But the truth is I am, because I log my money coming in and going out every single day, almost to the place where it's gotten a little bit obsessive. So I need to chillax on it a little bit. I've automated all my bill payments and all my systems, which is like huge for me.
Yeah.
I have zero emotional attachment now to the money in my bank account. And I know that sounds weird, but I used to get anxiety about looking at my bank account balances and looking at my debt. I would actually feel anxiety in my body, or God forbid, the shame of your debit card getting turned down. That would just send me into a tizzy. Whereas, well, one, I don't get declined anymore, but two, there's no emotional attachment to it. Even if I have to call somebody the government to check on my taxes, there's no feeling shameful when I'm having that phone call, because the dude on the other end of the phone is probably in a very similar situation for me. So it would be really easy for me to pick up the stick, beat myself up that I'm not further ahead. Why isn't my debt paid down more? But I have really learned to flip that over and say, well, I'm not back at square one. That's not the truth for me. I've done X, Y, and Z, and I'm much further along than I would have been had I not done that. So even if you've lost weight and put it back on again, trust that that's part of your journey. You may not like it. I don't like that I had to add to my debt, but it's part of my journey. But I do celebrate and acknowledge how much more I've implemented, how much more I've learned. Think about all the diets you've been on, because they certainly teach you what you don't like, what you don't want to eat, how you don't want to live, what values that you're not willing to compromise on. And that allows you to move forward. So, Lisa, I know that you've had a lot of ups and downs with your relationship with food and making different choices. So I'd love to hear kind of some of your begin again moments where you've learned to not beat yourself up and let go. I always talk about progress, not perfection. That's a really, really huge thing within my community. I know it is for you as well.
Yeah, totally. Yeah. So today would be an excellent example. So today I am really booked. I have a very busy schedule today. I'm doing a lot of new things today. I goofed on some time issues, which that's hard for me to swallow because it's something that I pride myself on. And so I didn't have time for lunch today, and I hadn't prepped anything, and I didn't really have anything that I could just grab really quickly. And so I had a bagel and peanut butter on it. That's not the end of the world. It's just a bagel. I tend to not eat very much bread. Like I said, I'm in Lisa's program, and I usually eat better quality complex carbohydrates, but I didn't have anything prepared today because I kind of blew off yesterday. And, but But I know that like, before I started working with Lisa, I probably would have, because this is, food is definitely an issue of mine, where there's a lot of shame, there's a lot of backstory, and I mean, I think that's true for most people. Not terribly unusual that way. But before, it would have been like, oh, screw it. I'll just, as long as I'm here, as long as I've already had the bagel and the peanut butter, I might as well go ahead and have the pizza or do whatever I'm going to do later, and just sort of have that. I'll just have to start over, the screw it attitude that then goes along with the I need to beat myself like crazy because I've made this horrible, horrible decision, and I'm never going to be able to succeed at this. And then look at the backlog of all the times that I haven't succeeded. When it's, in fact, there have been a lot of victories along the way. Maybe some things didn't work and some things did work. But at this point, I'm like, yeah, okay. So I had a bagel and probably a lot of peanut butter.
But it was natural peanut butter, right?
It actually was.
And it was probably not a white bagel, I'm guessing.
It actually was a white bagel. Yeah, it was.
I'm just kidding.
It was.
Guess what, people? Nothing bad happens if you eat a white bagel.
Happens.
You don't die. You get to move on and let it go.
Absolutely. So yeah. So after I do the rest of my afternoon's activities, I will go prep some protein, because I know that's the cornerstone of having my body feel the way that I want it to feel, which is what Lisa is constantly saying and has really sunk in. And it's the same way in my business. It's people don't like people will purge a lot of their stuff, and then they'll see themselves falling into some of the same patterns where they're shopping because they're bored, or they got in a fight with their spouse, or they're angsty at work, or like any of those sort of things, or they're not clearing things out because they're not making time for that. They're not making it a priority, and they're cramming their schedules full of activities, and then they'll be like, oh, I can't believe I let this happen. And out comes the stick, out comes all of the judgment and the aggravation. And while it's totally legit to feel disappointed, it's important to not stay there and then allow that to be the catalyst for more of the same behavior, and to stop that trigger and get better, into the mind space of like, oh, okay, so this wasn't a great decision, or why did this decision happen? What's going on in my life that I'm not checking in with myself? And, and I'm ignoring my emotions. And so I'm dealing with it with the most comfortable thing that I know how to do, which is eating or shopping or, reckless spending or whatever it is. And we all have this.
Absolutely.
This is it just shows up in different areas for different people, but we're all dealing with the same thing because we're all trying to run away from pain. And when we can sit with the pain and just acknowledge the pain and stop running away from the pain, which will never go away, that's when you can really kind of get that space between yourself and what your behavior is, because then you can really see it for what it is. Oh, this is a coping mechanism. Mm-hmm. And then it doesn't turn into this giant, oh, well, what the hell? I'm just going to keep doing this. And you just self-destructive behavior.
I talk a lot about the pendulum swinging, right? And learning how to self-correct before you swing too wide. Yeah. But it's really about maintaining new levels of consciousness around the behaviors that you really want to change in your life. And if you're having one of those begin again moments, just let yourself begin again. But be mindful to put down, like you said, the judgment and the shame of, oh, I'm back here again. Because the truth is, you're not back there. You can't go, we cannot travel back in time. We have to start where we're at. And there's a big piece in there as well around forgiveness, like forgiving ourselves that we added more debt, forgiving ourselves that we put the weight back on, forgiving ourselves that our dining room table is covered in clutter again, raising my hand. And it's just a matter of, okay, well, what do I need to do today? So you can spend a lot of time suffering and beating yourself up, or you can just make the decision of, this is where I'm at. I'm not back at the beginning. This is where I am today. What do I need to do to move myself forward? And what do I need to do to stay conscious of my behaviors so that I'm having less? We want to start having less of those begin again moments. Mm-hmm. But if you're having them, not having them so emotionally charged, so you actually can feel empowered to just start. Where do you struggle the most with your begin again moments, Jen?
Well, as we were discussing this, I was just thinking about something I see as really hard for myself and really hard for people that I talk to is you're working really hard day by day to make progress, to eat healthier, lose this weight, and maybe over the course of several weeks you lose a few pounds, and then you go away for a long weekend where there's maybe a wedding or something like that, and you eat a lot and you drink a lot, and you come back and you put those 3 or 4 pounds that you spent weeks trimming off have now come back all at once. Or same with the debt, like you've been working month by month, you've been paying some off, and then you go on a shopping spree of some kind. Maybe it's buying the dress to go to the wedding. I don't know. You've maybe like worked really hard to get it down a couple $1,000s, and then something comes up and you put that exact amount or more back on. I feel like those are the times where you're like, God, I spent months doing this. Mm-hmm. And in a weekend, a day or a week, or, in a really short period of time, it feels like all that progress was undone. And I feel like that's really hard for us. That's when we feel like, oh, we're starting over again. But if we look at it as the journey, like the stock market, overall, we have big dips, highs, lows. Overall, even with the great recession and everything, we can see that overall it's on an upward trend. I think if we can think of those things as an ongoing journey, that we are working on this upward trend, and yes, there will be highs and lows, and that, all of the things that we all work on really are ongoing, lifelong journeys. We're never going to, even if you get to your perfect weight or if you get completely out of debt, you're still working on your financial journey. You're still trying to build wealth, all of those things. So I think looking at it as a long-term journey with short highs and lows, daily ups and downs, as opposed to getting to some point someday and that being the goal. We'll continuously having improvement goals rather than
absolutely
a big goal.
Yeah, I look at that as well. Like, are you over time trending down the way you want to go? And I think it's important that whether it's your clutter, your money, your weight, that you're using more than just those as measures of your progress. Right? You have to look at how your mindset has changed, the different habits you've implemented, as opposed to just like if you're only using the weight on the scale to measure your progress. Oh my goodness, that is just like, that can be crushing for people. Because like you said, you go away for a weekend, you have some stuff, and it's really not a big deal. Like, you can let it go and you just get, you just do the things you need to do to move yourself forward again. You make more payments on your debt, you go and declutter your closet, whatever it is. But paying attention to the behaviors and actually acknowledging them and celebrating them even more, which is why I have all my clients keep a victory journal of the things that they're doing really well every single day, so that they're marking their progress every single day. So for the longest time, I would write down that I was tracking my money every day. For the longest time, I could only track the incoming money. I couldn't track the outgoing money because it was too overwhelming. But I celebrated the hell out of that. And now it's just such a habit. But in the beginning, it wasn't a habit. So even regardless of where my finances are now, that is still something I really celebrate and acknowledge that that's really changed my relationship with money. And I can't unknow that. I can't undo that. So I think what I want to end with is just letting everybody know, and you guys can chime in, that stop buying into this belief that you're back at square one, because it's so defeating. I mean, it feels like literally you're just crushed when you do that to yourself. Really take the time, regardless of where you are in your financial journey, your journey with clutter, your journey with your weight, really take some time to sit down and acknowledge all the things that you have done, all the things that you have learned, all the things that are different in your life from the last time that you started, from that chunk of your journey. And then give yourself permission to move forward, starting where you're at, knowing it's just to begin again and not a back at square one. There's a very different energy attached to both. So do you guys have anything you want to say to kind of wrap this up for our listeners? And hopefully there's lots of value and little golden nuggets and mindset shifts within this conversation. Who wants to go?
I think it's great. I think it's super, super important. And I will also add, with the victory journal, which I also do, and I also recommend to my clients to do that, to have some sort of running tally. It doesn't have to be anything that's like a big project. We tend to sort of like want to have like the perfect notebook, and then we're going to have our tea, and we're going to sit down. We're going to do it exactly right. Use the right pen and all this sort of stuff. And I don't, we just do this to ourselves, right? It's just like, no, screw it. Get, anything. It doesn't matter. I'm sure you have exactly what you need. You don't have to go make it more complicated than it is. Just do it and try to do it regularly. If you don't, oh well, come back to it. You're not starting over. You're just picking it back up.
Yep.
So
Amen to that.
Let that process be easy.
And I'd like to say just even having the conversations, like you said, Lisa, at first you were just tracking income, which I came across that in Denise Duffield Thomas's book and her program and stuff, the idea of starting with just tracking income, because it makes you feel positive. I mean, that's a great step. If people aren't tracking their income, they don't actually know how much they're making, especially if you have on the side gigs, do eBaying, Etsy, all that kind of stuff. Tracking, that's a great start. And then working in more, every step you take is in the positive direction. Listening to this, if you haven't thought of these things before, this is a step in a positive direction. Us having these conversations are a step in a positive direction. So often just starting to think about it more is going to bring your attention to the positive part of it. And that in itself is a step.
I totally agree. So I would love to carry on this conversation in our Facebook group that we're going to start, so that we can carry on the conversation. And now I'm committing to it because I've said it out loud on the podcast. We'll also link in the show notes a link to all of our websites so people can check out our work. We'll also link to the book that you were referencing, Jen, because I've never heard of it. So I'd like to check it out. And Denise Dunfield Thomas as well, because her Lucky Bitch Boot Camp, we're all a part of that. And that was really instrumental in all of us changing our money mindsets. And then Jen, it helped you to launch your program and how you support women, which has been huge for me. So that is the power of this group. We've all actually experienced each other's work, even though at the end of the day, we're all really coaching on the same stuff, which is why this is just us talking about the stuff, which is really cool. So hopefully everybody enjoyed this episode. Hop over to the Facebook group, leave your comments, review us on iTunes.
Subscribe, rate, and review.
There you go. Subscribe, rate, and review. I got to get better on these call to actions for you people. But here we are. We're doing this thing. So hopefully you guys enjoyed, and we will see you on our next episode.